Thank you, sir. And
Yeah.
people have adjusted to our changing of the timeline on the bill.
Yeah, yeah.
So that took a while for people to get used to that.
Bob Indy, are you on the phone? Yes, sir. Great. Michael, you ready to get rolling?
I am.
Great. Well, welcome everybody to the special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District for Sunday, July 6th. Time is 8 a.m. and I call this meeting to order. Michael, do you have some announcements?
Welcome to the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District Special Board Meeting. This meeting is being fed live over the internet. And the public can view this meeting by going to www.kmpud.com and following the appropriate link. If the public would like to make a comment or ask a question, please email msharp@kmpud.com and the board will respond. Director Endy will be participating via teleconference, so all voting must be done by roll call, and the public should identify themselves when speaking. Thank you very much.
Peter, would you like to?
Sure.
Take the roll.
Andy?
Here.
Rickert?
Here.
O'Grady?
Here.
Dornbrook here, and Epstein.
Here.
Okay.
Great. So item number 4 is oral communication or public input. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on non-agenda items relating to district business. No action can be taken by the board on matters not appearing on the agenda. Does anybody have any? Yes.
I'm Nancy Burdette from the Westside Homeowner.
Welcome.
And I'm requesting that the board consider at future meetings to add an agenda item that includes the Pledge of Allegiance. Because no matter where we stand on issues, I think we all can stand behind the flag. Thank you.
Okay. Is there another one?
Yep. I'm Keith Meyer, Lot 124, West Side. I'm also a director on the KMA board. We want to, number one, thank PUD for a great job on snow removal during the year, although it was a very light year, not much to remove. Which leads us to one of the questions that we have on our on the new estimate going forward, and your rebate of the portion of our contract last year. Contract was $79,000, rebate of almost $10,000, which we appreciate, and that's written into the contract. We're a little curious as to why that rebate was about 12%, given the extremely light year, and the year before was lighter, but still a reasonably substantial year later in the year. That was a 9% rebate, so we went from a moderate year, 9% rebate, to a very light year with a 12% rebate. We're sort of curious why it wasn't more. And number 2, we understand that going forward, you've changed a little bit about overhead allocation into the entire snow removal pool, increasing the G&A allocation from about 8% to 11% of total operating costs among PUD departments. That's a 40% increase in overhead just for the snow removal operation. So we want a little bit of, if possible, if we could get a little clarification on why that was increased so much.
Okay.
Those are my 2 comments.
So I think we should probably take those offline since we can't act here, unless there's anything you want to say at this point, Michael.
No, we could certainly agendize both of those items, and it seems very appropriate to put them on the agenda and discuss them.
Good questions, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll respond. Any other input from the public, Bertrand?
Hello, my name is Bertrand Perrou. I'm a KMA homeowner, and I'd like to make a comment on the water situation in Kirkwood. So I understand actually the water situation is very good. Nevertheless, I mean, we have good capacity, and actually it's actually distributed. So we got some recommendation. Actually, it's not phrased as recommendation in the newsletter, but at the stage 2 mandatory behaviors. And I'd like to invite the board to be a bit more creative in the specific situation that we have in Kirkwood. First, I don't think, maybe wrong, that effort we can make toward conservation, if warranted, are going to help California's situation. So we have a lot of water in Kirkwood, and we have a lot of investment as well. So we need to be careful on how much you ask people to conserve, because the KMPUD needs the revenue from the consumption of this thing. It's also important that people keep irrigating their property if we want to help improving the vegetation and things like that. So that's a general concern, actually. We are in a situation where we have asked the community to do extraordinary commitment, financial commitment for the public utilities, since we've done first a wonderful power plant. Now we are doing a grid, and I just want to make sure that, my utilities have greatly increased. If I take how much I consume of electricity and divide that by how much I pay, I end up, my kilowatt is 80 cents. And I understand we are doing a lot of commitment, but I'd like the board to be actually trying to spread this massive effort that we are doing on the longest period. I heard at some point that someone was, there was a consideration to try to pay off early some of this beautiful loan that we had at very low rate. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you have loans below 1%, we should just use them and spread the effort on a longer period instead of on a short period. So that's basically the comments. I've seen this proposal for an extensive trail in the meadow, and I'm just asking where is the money is going to come from again. And so I can see that we could do specific spot improvement to cross the creek at several locations, things like that. But I invite the board to be conservative with financially, since we have done already so much financially. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll agendize those and come back and respond to later meeting.
Yeah. And as a comment, actually, for the water itself, rather than asking people not to irrigate specific days, which could be fairly difficult for people. Let's say you are coming on a Thursday to take care of your property, but unfortunately, that's the day you're not supposed to water, so you cannot do anything with the water. It'd be clever, I think, to try to anticipate recommended consumptions based on what the capacity is, how many people actually can tap on it, and just say you should not exceed that much in irrigation. I know it's not the way it's done in California, but this is a specific situation. And we have a very nice control with the remote meter on who's taking the water. Actually, it's easy to send an email to remind people that they are using too much of the water. So I think we have a lot of tools so we can make it smarter than just having this blanket.
Tuesday when nobody's here.
Yeah. That's the two comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other input from the public? Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item 5, which is whether anybody has any consents to the agenda or consent calendar. And for purposes of the Brown Act, I think I'm required to read the items on the consent agenda, which are number 1, approval of the minutes from June 14th board meeting, and number 2, approval of a resolution to approve the request by district staff to change the Independence Day holiday, which is not a holiday for this district, to a floater holiday. And then number 3 and 4 are RCI change orders number 1 and 2. The first one is related to the Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog survey and aquatic monitor in the amount of $10,546.30. And item number 4, second change order from RCI is related to the Spotted Owl additional surveys in the amount of $7,560. And then consent item number 5 is approval of current consent for claims, standard piece of business. And finally, another standard piece of business is review of current receivables and shut-off reports. Does anybody want to modify or pull any of those consent items? So hearing none, we'll move to item number 6, which is adoption of the consent calendar. Does anybody want to make a motion?
This is Rickard moves adoption of the consent calendar.
Norm will second that.
So voting by roll call, Andy?
Andy, aye.
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Norbert, aye.
Epstein, aye.
So it passes unanimously. Which brings us to item 8A, discussion and possible action regarding the design timeline bidding process. Actually, we probably all do this agenda item by memory at this point.
Go ahead, that's it.
Certainly. Costs and construction activities associated with the Out Valley Power Line project. Manager Sharp and Michelle Gamble, RCI. There are 3 sub-agenda items, which I'll read for the benefit of the audience. Overall construction update, which is Michelle Gamble. And second is owner furnished materials, Manager Sharp. And third is Out Valley operations and maintenance, Manager Sharp. So welcome, Michelle. It's great to see you.
The Out Valley update will cover many items this month, starting with the construction update by Michelle Gamble. We will then discuss some of the areas we are concentrating on to ensure on-time completion and the operations and maintenance after the completion. Out Valley financials will be next with the PG&E update, the overall Out Valley costs and risks, and the AA drawdown schedule. Next, the board will consider the approval of the supplemental loan documents. And then finally, Michelle will review the telecommunications contract required by PG&E. With that, I will turn it over to Michelle for the Out Valley construction update. Do you want to use the clicker or do you want me to?
You can use it.
Okay.
I won't multitask.
Okay.
Well, good morning. I'm really excited to be here. From the last meeting, we have made phenomenal progress on all aspects of the Out Valley project. I'll start with the underground. Q&D has been working and making about 4,000 linear feet of trenching per week. Right now, they are just east of Martin Meadows Road. We have a short section where we go off the highway. Starting on Monday or Tuesday, actually, they're going to be their last push back in the Caltrans right away. They've got about 10,000 linear feet of trenching remaining on the underground project. So they're really making tremendous progress. As they've been working in the Caltrans right away, we did have an issue come up with Caltrans. When the project was permitted, Caltrans had pushed us off the pavement everywhere that we could be off the pavement. And so that's what we did, and that's what we have were able to get permitted through Caltrans. As we started working on this last stretch from east of Silver Lake, Caltrans maintenance personnel raised concerns that they did not want our power line in the shoulder. They're concerned with their snow pole markers that they put along the road. It was thoroughly discussed in the permitting, so it was rather a surprise when this issue was resurfaced. But we continue to have discussions with Caltrans about mitigation measures to deal with their issue. They're very concerned. Michael and I met with Caltrans last Wednesday, and we're moving forward towards a resolution. Unfortunately, the resolution is that Caltrans is asking us to be in the pavement. So we made the decision when this issue first surfaced to keep the project moving forward in an area where we'd anticipated being in the shoulder. We went into the pavement so that we could not slow Q&D down, and we have given them direction to stay in the pavement for the balance of the project. There are some cost implications, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Because we are in the pavement, what we're negotiating with Caltrans is what the limits of the paving patch will be, what the limits of any mill and overlay will be to really minimize those costs. There's also costs of removal of the pavement. What we found when we're working in the Caltrans right away is they'd indicated their pavement was 8 to 12 inches thick. What we have found throughout the project, Sometimes we have some places where it's 8 to 12 inches, more than likely it's 15 to 30 inches thick. So there's a significant, cost implication to the contractor for dealing with that. We're working through some negotiations with the contractors as to how to deal with those spoil materials in the most cost-effective and efficient way. Titan, the subcontractor to Q&D, returned to the site on June 23rd and began pulling cable. They started with the Bear River area, then they were just moving eastward. They picked up the sections, we have these little sections of conduit that we installed last year, so they've completed all of those. So right now they're waiting for Q&D to get far enough ahead. They're going to remobilize on July 21st, and their intent is to just finish up right behind Q&D, and so they'll have all of their cable pulling. Hopefully Q&D is going to finish that last segment, and then Titan's going to come in and pull it. Q&D has their vault and cabinet crews coming in right behind the construction crews as well. And so we've got, they're pretty much caught up on cabinets and vaults at this point. Q&D, once they're all done with their trenching, their big push is to get the trenching done. They're anticipating getting all of the trenching done around the second week in August, which gives them time at that point to get the final cable pulling completed, get everything tested, and get the final site work done. We still have to go back and screen the sectionalizing cabinets, finish the final restoration efforts, put in, there's a couple of gates we have to put in, and then there's some finished work along Bear River that we have to do. But they anticipate having the power line cable installation and all the testing complete by August 29th. We'll go to the overhead. I have to say, the underground contractor has conceded that the overhead contractor has way more fun equipment than he has. So, Wilson Construction, they have been flying literally out there on the project. We had a clearance with PG&E from June 10th through June 20th. During that time, they were able to get the balance of all the 115 structures installed, so everything along the really steep segment down to Salt Springs. They got all of the transmission and the distribution cable on that 115 section from Salt Springs all the way to KM Green installed, all the conductors, everything is strung and sagged. For those of you that are going on the tour later on today, you'll be able to see this. It looks really phenomenal to see this power line up and in place in this area where we looked over the cliff and went, oh my gosh, how the heck are they going to do it? We also received great news from the Forest Service about a week and a half ago. Due to the district deciding to, and getting approval from the Forest Service to do intensive tree-to-tree surveys along the balance of the 34-5 line. That's what one of the change orders you approved. We went out and we had biologists out on the ground for about 5 days, and they looked at every single tree adjacent to the quarter mile out, presented that information to the Forest Service. We found an owl. We were like, oh my gosh. But what they've determined is that it was a male owl, and they had to go back and do some additional surveys. The male owl was not supporting a nest, so they think this male is just flying through the area. And the Forest Service felt confident enough that because there was no nest, they have released the LOP, and so the overhead contractor has been able to continue their work. They're excavating holes up there. They are putting in the balance of the 34-5 structures. As of Thursday, there were 17 holes left to drill and 24 structures that needed to be set. So they anticipate having those done all by July 22nd. Then they're going to be prepping, they have all the foundations done by the 22nd, all the poles set by the 24th. They're looking at having the next clearance August 5th through the 10th, and they'll go ahead and they will fly all of the 34-5 distribution and transmission line. And so that will all be set. They're going to remove the existing 12 kV line. They anticipate that by August 21st. And then Wilson anticipates demobbing from the site for the overhead by September 4th. So that is significantly ahead of schedule. We're really, really pleased with that. The substation. The Wilson Construction substation crew's been working on both KM Blue and KM Green. At KM Blue, those of you that have been up there have seen the transformer. The transformer arrived in mid-June and has been set. So there's a big gray box sitting up there now. So it looks really good to have that. At KM Green, Outback, who's Wilson's sub, continues to excavate for the structures, foundations. We have some drill piers that have to go in to hold some of the steel structures that are in there, and also the foundations for the control building. They did encounter rock, so we did have to mobilize their large rock drill, which was something we had talked about when we awarded the bid. We'd gone out and gotten, as a part of the bid, some rock prices, and so we have that locked in. So they're finishing up the drilling for the rock. We have steel that has arrived, so we had steel deliveries, 2 deliveries last week and 1 the week before, and then the next one is scheduled for Monday. And then we have, they're currently pouring the foundation for the transformer, and the transformer is, actually, we'd originally thought it was going to be July 10th. It's been pushed back to July 14th, which is still ahead of when we'd anticipated having that transformer there. We continue to work with the Forest Service on a variance so that all of our contractors can continue working during EV days. And the Forest Service has been really, their communication with us on these days has been phenomenal. We've had 2 EV days, and we call the Forest Service going, what can or can't we do? And we haven't had to slow down operations. Pretty much the only thing we can't do on those EV days right now is anything with chainsaws, which we're not doing anyway, or any welding. We have a small amount of welding that has had to happen up at KM Green, but it didn't happen on the EV day. So at this time, the underground and substation portions of the project are on schedule and anticipated to be completed per the contract documents. And then the overhead portion is ahead of schedule. And so after the meeting today, we are going to have a tour. So I'm excited to show everybody the progress we've made. It's very exciting to see these big structures up and all the wires and insulators. So with that, any questions?
First, congratulations on incredible progress. Really terrific. Just for the tour, just maybe give some of the logistics now while people are listening.
Sure.
Time and place.
The start time is going to be
Noon. So we're starting up at noon, and appropriate vehicles would be recommended for four-wheel drive. It's Forest Service roads, so
Leaving from where?
right here.
Yeah, leaving
Over
from
here.
here.
We have a couple of stops, primarily focusing, we'll start here, one stop on the underground. There's not a lot to see on the underground because it's all underground.
Underground.
And then we'll stop at the staging area, we'll stop at KM Green, and then we'll go to the overlook and show everybody the 115 looking down to Salt Springs. So appropriate footwear and appropriate vehicles. And I told Michael, you know, it's an active construction zone, so, you know, we ask that you don't be touching any of the equipment up there. I told him, I says, if anybody breaks anything, they've bought it. So,
Well, we bought it.
Wanted to fly the helicopter.
Great. Any other questions from the board? Caroline?
Carolyn Scott.
Bob here. Given the way the overhead is going, and it's going well, and it's ahead of schedule, is there any provision in the contract for us to recoup costs that perhaps reflect the efficiency that the contractor has been able to achieve in moving so quickly?
there is not a provision to do that. We talked at length when we were deciding how to bid these projects, and because we have essentially 4 different components of the project, the underground, the 2 substations, and the overhead, we found it difficult to reward one contractor for completing their portion of the project when really the whole project has to come together at one time. Even though the overhead is finishing early, the success of the completion of the project is really centered on that last contractor finishing their work on time. And so we were not able to come up with something that we thought would be fair and equitable, that would give a reward to a contractor.
So the answer is no.
No, the long answer.
Caroline, did you have something you want to say?
There was an issue with the power interruptions for the Bear Valley people. What happened with that? Did that get resolved, or has there been any problems with those people?
The Bear Valley.
The cabins.
Oh,
the
the
low-
cabins? The clearance. We had, when we had a clearance or an outage, because we were looking at a several-day duration, we had to provide backup generation. And so that was something that we negotiated back and forth with PG&E, is how do we handle that? And so what we were required to do was actually have generators up on site for that duration. And so all the cabin owners and everybody who serviced off that existing 12 kV line did not lose power other than when we were switching from the generators, or from the 12 kV to the generators and back. So it was a half-hour outage at each end. We'll have to do the same thing for the August clearance, so that property owners up there will not be without power for the duration.
So there wasn't any problems with any of the owners?
No.
Has there been any other issues with owners there complaining about anything, noise, dust, I mean, anything important?
Some of the owners up there have been, concerned about, when we were paving, they were concerned about the length of the wait. And it was the week after Memorial Day, and the contractor was really pushing, and so the waits were 30 minutes long. And so we got a couple phone calls. We had 2 residents up there that weren't that happy. We were, prior to us having that paving, I was sending out weekly updates to all the cabin owners. I had the secretary and then 2 other private individuals that asked for updates, and for the most part, everybody was really great. So.
I think RCI should be commended. They did an outstanding job on communicating with those owners and minimizing any of the complaints that we did have, and following up very quickly with the complaints and making sure that they were updated. So I saw some of the emails, and they went from high level of anxiety down to low level of anxiety very quickly. So it's good to see. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the public? Yes, sir.
How are the safety statistics, injuries of the crews and various?
The only thing that I've heard about is one of my inspectors blew a tire. But I've heard of no accidents. I've not seen any
No
accident rates or reports.
reportables.
No. All of our contractors are extremely safety conscious.
And the contractors have safety officers on site on each job, especially with the helicopters and everything you're seeing, and
Yeah, they're dangling.
people dangling on wire. It's
That's
pretty
great.
incredible pictures. I think the first day when the winds were up and they were trying to set a very heavy structure, that was probably the only dicey day that we had, that they shut down because it was unsafe.
Great. Do you want to move on to
Please.
sub-bullet 2?
Board members routinely ask me what makes me nervous. And 2 in the top of the list are the receipt of owner-furnished materials and the operations and maintenance of the line once it's completed. I wanted to place these agendas straight up on the agenda so that we can discuss them outright. I'm happy to state that once the board members ask me what makes me nervous, we actually go out and investigate to try to make me less nervous. And one of those things is that we did a good job with our owner-furnished material. We went out to each of our vendors and asked them what the schedule is, how are they progressing on producing. This picture shows the various owner-furnished equipment needed at KM Green alone. And basically everything is being provided by the district. And you can see why I'm nervous. This chart here, District SAS has reached out to the vendors and confirmed the delivery date and that everything is on schedule. Crossed-out items on this list have been already delivered, and we have been dealing with an issue of transportation to the site with the large items such as the transformer and the building that has to go to KM Green. Only a 50-foot truck can actually make the turns on Forest Service Road. And the transport trucks are much larger, so they've had to actually make arrangements to offload at the staging area, put it onto a different truck to get it into the site itself. But I'm pleased to say that all of owner-furnished material are on track, and the contractor is confident with the delivery schedule.
Congratulations. That's great.
And here's some of the equipment that we purchased, just to remind you. You've seen this in the past, but here's some CCVTs and PTs. Everybody remembers the GOABs, the transformers, the breakers. Here's the large transformer, the 115, and the transformer that we just received at the As far as operation and maintenance, one thing to build an out valley line, another thing is to make sure that it doesn't flicker once it's on, and to ensure that it's well maintained and functional. Staff beginning to devote much more time to this subject, and we'll make this a regular agenda item so we can discuss how we're moving on. Essentially two parts, our in-house inspection team and Randy Fitchner's crew of actually going out and taking a look and doing visual inspections. And another is the outside service for the more detailed inspections and maintenance. We're planning on producing an RFP for services, but in the short term, Wilson Construction may be ideally qualified to assist us in the short term on this. They built 2 of the 3 components of the structure, and they perform this work. They actually perform maintenance and inspections for other entities. It kind of fits in with their, they have these large projects, and then in between they can do actually maintenance work, and then they have repair crews throughout. And they have an office in Rancho Cordova, so it kind of works out. We met with Wilson. It was a very productive meeting. Seemed very willing and capable to complete the maintenance and emergency repairs, and we've developed with a sole contact person that can work with the district to provide T&M quotes and proposals for the short term, while we get experienced enough to put out a qualified RFP for long term. One of the issues discussed with Wilson was access to the problem area. Though Wilson can rent equipment, it would be much more efficient and timely for the district to have equipment pre-staged and ready to go. And I think we've talked about snowcats, snowmobiles, or other options. One option could be a piston billet, which is pictured in this slide. And this has been discussed at the Operations Capital Committee meeting and discussed with Director Dornberg, and I think you might have a few comments.
Yeah, I've done some further research, and I would recommend we go with the Tucker 2000 Terra with rubber cleats. That's what the Caltrans people have over here. They use it in the winter to go and take propane bottles up to the GasX system on the spur. They can go directly up the road with it because it has rubber cleats. Also, it has narrow enough tracks so you can put it on a trailer. You don't have to detrack it to take it on the highway, which is an issue with a lot of snowcats because of the width of the tracks. And we Googled it, and there are about 25 of them available right now in the price range of $40,000 to $70,000. You want to pick one up with less than 5,000 hours and more than 2,000 hours. So there are a lot of them available, and I think that's the way to go because Caltrans has had really good luck with it. And it could be staged at Peddler Hill. It's with the rubber cleats. It's got enough strength to climb up to the Coal Creek substation, but it wouldn't damage the road if there's no snow on the road when you go across the dam. You could even stage it possibly down there at the resort. So that'd be my recommendation at this point. But obviously we need to do some more research.
And I think Director Dornberg also recommended that this not be used for snow plowing in the valley.
Right, because it's not really. I mean, you can do some minimal dozing with it, but it's not ideal for that because it doesn't have the ice cocks, which are what tears up the roads.
Yeah.
The carbide tip ice cocks. So.
It's kind of two different machines. If we decide that we do want a snowcat for plowing, that would be one machine that would be staged here in the valley. But a transportation vehicle, whether it be the Tucker or a snowmobile, would be staged off the valley and ready to inspect or go to emergency repairs.
I guess I'll ask the obvious question. Looks like it could hold some skiers going up to Red Cliffs.
That's just a side benefit.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. That's for closed session.
Most of the Tuckers don't have that kind of a cab on it. They have it's more of a utility tools. Sorry, Bob.
Sit outside.
Do you have to plow before you can take that where you need to
No.
go?
Oh, no.
Is that it for Out Valley?
Yeah, so the district will staff and will work with Director Dornbrook, and we hope to bring this back to operations. And once operations and capital feel pretty confident with the direction, we'll bring that before the
And so one question is, judging by that picture, I assume you're factoring in the 115 all the way down to that TSP 01?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that this has come more at the limelight, because it's a longer line.
And it's very steep
Yes, sir.
hill, cliff. Any other comments, questions from the board on 8A or the audience?
Does that thing go on the cliff? It doesn't go down that cliff, does it?
Oh, I think that it could, in the snowfall, I think it could go down
Really?
down that steep. Oh, yeah,
If there's enough coverage.
if there's enough
But
coverage.
also, there are also roads that go down there.
Well, I know there's roads.
So that, I mean, to get down to Salt Springs.
Oh,
they-
yeah, I know
you
that.
Or
Okay.
maybe more appropriately, to get back up. I'm sure you could go down, it's a question of getting back up. You might have to take the traverse around, or we could send a trailer in on the road. There's a road into Salt Springs, and then trailer it back out without detracking it. Which is it's, if you don't have an experienced crew, it takes time, and you have a lot of tools, and it's not that easy.
Any other questions, comments on 8A from the audience? 8B, which is continued discussion and possible action regarding the current PG&E cost estimate and impacts to the overall finances and drawdown schedule in relation to the district's Out Valley Power Line project. And there are 3 sub-bullets here: current status of PG&E negotiations, overall project costs, and A8 drawdown schedule. Michael, Michelle?
District staff and President O'Grady and Director Epstein continue to negotiate with PG&E over the ownership of the 115 line, the cost overruns, and other issues. The new point of demarcation or ownership change is depicted on the picture above, and it's very important. At this point, the blue line represents the existing 115 line, and the red line represents the new district line. And this actually is all in place. It's sitting there. The point of demarcation is where they join, of course, and this is a pole where the existing 115 line actually goes through from Tiger Creek to Salt Springs, and the district comes off as a radial. And this is better shown in a picture. You can see that this line here, and it's shown right here, this is the point of demarcation. The switch, the pole, which is 0/1, and the bracing and the switches is all will be owned by PG&E, while the line that goes to 0/2, that's the second pole, that would, at the cable point, that would be where our responsibility begins. We're still in the flat ground down on down at Salt Springs, but this would be exactly where the point of demarcation goes and where the actual responsibility would end. So these are the pictures of the actual pole with PG&E owned and the district's responsibility. And I think it's interesting, you can see the H towers in the background here. They go through, the line actually goes through this on its way to Salt Springs. The goal is to have the interconnection agreement revised and signed in August. There's a lot of things to this, to these negotiations, but I think I've addressed them in previous meetings. I was just wondering if there's any questions or anything I can address.
In that picture on the left, there are a couple of miscellaneous wooden poles. Are they relevant, or are they just kind of local distribution poles?
Yeah, they're local.
Right.
They're not relevant to our project.
Michael, do you think we're at the stage of negotiations where all the terms are pretty well set, it's just a matter of formalizing? Or are there significant aspects that still need to be discussed and resolved?
I think that we are, as each day goes forward, we're getting closer and closer. I think it's more towards the former, that we are just ironing out the details. One of them was this point of demarcation. It was a huge point of where our responsibility, the payment of the cost overruns, keeping the future costs down. These have all been pretty well ironed out. There's some ownership issues as far as what will be owned in KM Green. There's a telecommunication line, which Michelle's going to go over here in just a moment. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, these are minor issues.
Great. Any comments, questions from the audience on overhead schedule and ownership? The net, for those of you who haven't been here before, is there were 20 poles, is that right? 20 poles on the 115 kV line that used to be owned under the interconnection agreement that Eric signed by PG&E. And the revised proposal is we're going to own and maintain those. So not only do we have more control of our own destiny, but we don't have to pay the capital gains tax, the ITCC tax on assets that we deed to PG&E that cost them zero. And we don't have to pay them a 4.5% per year maintenance cost on those assets that we deed to PG&E. So
And it saves about 6 cents a kilowatt hour.
Just
Yes.
one other question to Michelle about the in-ground and the Caltrans issues. Have you got an idea of the cost impact of that? And is there any recourse to Caltrans, who signed an easement agreement with certain conditions, and now they're changing the conditions? Can you look to them for any support?
We are planning on going back to Caltrans. We've had some other utilities that were Caltrans utilities that we encountered, and so we've got a process. Caltrans has a process in place where we can go back and put a claim against the state, and so we're going to be doing that. As far as the cost implications, I'm meeting with our contractor tomorrow to look at what we can do to kind of mitigate some of these costs. What Caltrans has done is they've allowed us to coordinate with their Cables Lake maintenance person, who we've met and seems to be a very reasonable person to work with. So we're going to be looking in the field and making site-specific decisions about the paving. So I don't have a cost at this point. I've given direction to the contractor based on cost and what I think is going to minimize costs, but I don't have a final cost at this point.
Sounds like it could be big.
It could potentially be big.
I'm just trying to understand the Caltrans concern. Are they concerned about coming back in and putting the snow stakes through a conductor?
Correct.
That's kind of our concern, too.
Yeah.
But I must say that during the design, this was extensively discussed, and the depth of the conductor and it being in conduit, we are beyond the depth that Caltrans indicated with a factor of safety. So I feel very confident that if they installed those per plans, there would not be an issue. The concern is whether they get installed in a consistent manner throughout.
But Peter, they've
There's a
encouraged us to
slurry
come back
across
and
that,
file
too.
a claim. So we'll see where it goes.
You'd have to drive the stake pretty hard to go through the slurry and the PVC.
Yes.
But they're using motorized.
I understand,
Yeah.
even with the compressor though, to drive, how thick is the slurry? Whatever
24
it takes.
inches.
Yeah, but it's just slurry. That PSI in the slurry is.
So it's less,
It's 150 PSI slurry. So, but it's
That's-
red. They hit it. You know.
you'd think if you hit something, you'd say, well, maybe this is not a good spot to keep pounding.
Well, you did before
These are highway, these are Caltrans workers. So is some of it now off the pavement because you started there and then they said, no, move over here, or is it?
We do have some short sections of areas that we installed last year and some stuff we did earlier this year where we're in the shoulder for 700 feet. And Caltrans is aware of that, and they need to we discussed that in our meeting, and they will be making their maintenance personnel aware that here's an area where we're in the shoulder, per plan, per agreement, and we're not going to come through and move the power line. So.
Any other questions on 8B2, overall project costs?
I think that's where we're going.
I'm sorry, 8B1, current status of PG&E negotiations. So you want to do 2?
Sure. So in your packet is the overall cost estimate, which shows $36.9 million in expense. Major changes from the last version, we reduced the ITCC tax from 34 to 22%. We're still hopeful that the bonus depreciation will pass through the House and we'll be able to pay the lower capital gains tax. Temporary clearance is added $60,000 for the August 5th through 10th clearance that we're looking. And RCI construction and management and observation has been increased by $69,000. And Michelle is here and can give some of the reasons why we're looking at an increase there.
When we put together our proposal to the board 2 years ago or so, we made assumptions about the amount of inspection that would be required throughout the project. And we looked at a 2-year construction period, estimated out, knowing that we had all the different components of the project, and came out with essentially a number of man hours that would be associated with, and I'm talking just the construction observation portion of this. We had assumed with our original contract that we'd have 3,840 man hours of inspection. As of May 31st, we've expended 3,857 man hours. So at this point, we're over that. Some of the reasons that we're over that is last fall, Caltrans required us to do night inspections of the traffic control. That wasn't something that was anticipated. It's something that we had to do to move the project forward. Also in 2013 and then again in 2014, the overhead contractor chose to work 6 and 7 days a week. Again, it was to keep the project moving forward. We had to have inspectors out here. Those hours from 2013 and 2014 were over 390 hours of inspection. And then also during the month of June, which isn't reflected in the May numbers, but Exponential is overseeing the setting of the 115 towers and the stringing of the cable. They asked us to have additional inspectors out here to help support them, and we did. So what's happened, those are the 3 main things that I see that have attributed to the overage in our construction hours. Last fall, as we were moving through this, I'm ever the optimist going, well, we can make it up in the project. And so we've been working diligently to achieve efficiencies and actually for the overall budget, with the exception of the construction observation, we're exactly where I anticipated being. But I wanted to bring it to the board's attention that what I see for our construction observation, we've got the month of June, which is just completed. We'd expended about $58,000 in construction observation. We have the month of July and the month of August, which are going to be the primary months that RCI will have inspectors out on the field. We'll have inspectors in September. It's primarily for the punch list items. So when I was looking at those numbers based on what I anticipate happening, I came up with about 59,000. In addition to that, we had some additional survey that we had to do to support one of the design changes on 3 of the 115 structures. So that ended up being about another $10,000, which would be included in that construction observation. And so I wanted to bring it to the board. I know I don't want to surprise you when we get to the end of the project if we did have a cost overrun, so I wanted to bring it to your attention that we may have a potential cost overrun. I'm still at this point trying to achieve efficiencies and trying to keep those costs down. At this point, I have about $131,000 left in my construction management and observation budget, and I have some overall project management and the environmental. We're still having to do all of our regular SWIP monitoring. I still have those budgets in place. I don't expect any overruns in those budgets. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have any questions, I'll update the board in August again as to where we are at that point. Like I said, right now we have 131,000 left. So I'm feeling, okay. I'm just, if we end up having some issues where I have to have more inspectors in the field. Right now we have inspectors that are doing the underground and the substation. We have a lot of, tomorrow I have 3 concrete pours going on, so I have to bring another inspector out to cover aspects of the project, but until free up my other inspector to do all the concrete pours.
Okay. So best case total additional cost overruns you see is what in sort of worst case?
I think worst case is 69,000.
Okay. And best case is 0?
Best case is 0, yes.
Welcome, Dave. We're on agenda item 8B2.
So Michelle, my only question in the what you just explained was the Saturday, Sunday, working 6 or 7 days, doesn't that reduce hours later on? I mean, or are those counted at time and a half or something like that?
No, those are, we pay our employees time and a half, we bill you at the rate, the inspector rate. So if my inspector's out there, be it an overtime or straight time, it's the same rate to the district. What happened is we ran long in last year. The overhead contractor worked until the first week in December.
You explained that earlier, yeah.
Right.
That's right. Okay.
This year, we started earlier, so I was looking at this going, well, we're gonna finish, the overhead's gonna finish earlier. They are, but they started earlier, the underground started earlier, so our construction schedule just shifted to earlier in the year. And
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions on 8B2, overall project costs?
Just one more item on that. An additional risk that has been discussed is the forecast for the issue of Caltrans paving, as we've discussed. So we added $100,000 into the forecast. We don't actually know what that is. There could actually be savings, believe it or not. This is for the trenching between Silver Lake and the district, and as Michelle has mentioned, we have a conflict with the snow plow line. However, we've been working with Caltrans in order to, if the trench patch is on or near the fog line, we will be able to just leave the trench patch and just pave over the patch itself. If the line is into the wheel well, we'll have to pave up into the middle of the travel lane. Now, this is a reduction from what we did last year. We paved all the entire travel lane. This would be half the travel lane. The good news is that everything passed on the west side of the Silver Lake Bridge, we may be able to leave as is. It could be a cost savings. So we put $100,000 in there as a placeholder for now, but we don't know exactly what this cost impact will be.
Questions from the board or the audience on this? So move on to 8B3, A8 drawdown schedule.
Here's the weighted interest average for the first $45 million in Russ A8 loans. It's right about 3.19%. For the remaining 4.5%, the board authorized staff to work with the finance committee to determine timing, amount of the draw and the term. So first step is staff consulted with Randy Finken from First Southwest as to the timing of for the lowest interest rate, and Randy wanted to get that done last week by Thursday before the jobs report came out. Staff consulted with Finance Committee member Alan Supp, who came up with the following drawdown schedule, and the schedule is actually the tranches 1 through 7 here in the amounts. The remaining 4.5 was taken in the 7 tranches ranging from 6 to 20 years terms, and from $425,000 to $775,000 amounts. So we got this from Alan. We confirmed that with Standish, and that was sent in last week for the drawdown. So if there's comments from the Finance Committee or Eric?
Yeah, this was a little confusing to me. Is the 3.19 just for the 35 years, and it will come down, weighted average will come down as a result of the shorter term periods, or is 3.19 the result of all loans, all A8 loans?
All A8 loans to date, $45 million, is the weighted average. With these new draws, that loan, that'll actually come down.
Dude, I mean, we're trying to get under 3% if I remember.
The answer to your question is yes, meaning it's both what's been drawn to date, but everything drawn to date has been $35 million.
Right.
35
Right.
So my goal is a number that starts with a 2, not a 3. And I don't know if we can get there. And Jill and I have a little bit of a disagreement on the calculation. I have 3.157 at this point.
3.157.
I guess that's been settled. I think, in our budgeting, we used 3 to 3.5. To say anything in that range was cost effective.
Right.
And so now we're really trying to figure out, like Stan just said, can we get to 3 or a little bit less than that, and without risking our cash balance.
And so to just elaborate a little more, this is on the Rust component. We also have the COPs, which were
No,
north of 3.
It is.
And then we have the CalPERS debt, which is 7. So
No, I understand that, yeah.
And the best way to get this down is to have good snow years for the next 5 years.
we'll look to Casey to make sure that happens.
No pressure, no pressure.
But
I
the
just
V-
tell people to spend as much on their utilities as they can. No one gets it, but they can tell, well, the more you pay, the lower the rate goes later.
So one other question,
Tough argument.
the V8 loans, the $8 million, that's not included here yet, or no? So the V8, since it's gonna come later in the year, may well be at somewhat higher rates, just because it's later in the year and the economy's picking up, et cetera.
Depends on where interest rates go.
But our plan is to draw short term for that.
Yeah.
And those rates are really low. And we'll probably draw that, as soon as the ink dries. Anything else on A8 drawdown, either from the board, staff, or the audience? So before we conclude 8B, I'd just like to make some brief comments to thank you, Michelle, very much for your personal leadership on this project and for RCI's efforts, work, and accomplishments. And I don't want to jinx the project, but I did tell Michael that as far as I was concerned, we love seeing you on weekends, but if it stays on track, you don't need to come back on weekends. And so I did want to make these comments, particularly in contrast with the meeting we had in January of 2013, where Eric and I had the privilege during holiday week to sit through an interview with power engineers, and we didn't get the chance to compare notes, but I think we both came to that meeting disgusted.
Yeah.
And
Discouraged.
we changed electrical engineers. A lot of the cost overrun projected at that point was due to construction oversight. And I think you and some of your colleagues said, we'll take care of it, trust us. And I was very nervous, and I remember asking you to come to all these meetings, and I'm really pleased to report that at least my opinion is that this project is ahead of schedule and on budget, and a lot of that credit goes to you. And so I think our trust, which you asked for at the time we gave you, was definitely well placed. So thank you very much for your efforts and your firm's efforts.
Thank you.
Very good.
This is being videoed.
I know, I'm going to be
Show
red.
Bruce later on.
Thank you.
So we'll move to 8C, which is, discussion and possible approval of resolution number 1417, which is a resolution authorizing the issuance of an electric enterprise revenue bond in the principal amount not to exceed $8 million to provide funds with which to pay the cost of constructing improvements, authorizing the sale of the bond to the Federal Financing Bank, authorizing a guarantee of the bond to be provided by the Rural Utility Service secured by a reimbursement bond to be issued by the district, fixing and approving the terms and covenants of the bond, the reimbursement bond, and the loan guarantee, providing for other matters properly related thereto, and amending Resolution 12-27 to change the definition of revenue of the electric enterprise. Manager Sharp and David Fama from Jones Hall. So in English, this is known as the B8 loan.
And that's barely English.
Staff has been working with Nancy Neris of Foster Pepper and Dave Fama, the district's bond counsel, on the loan documents for the an $8 million B8 supplemental loan. This has been going on blinding fast speed. Nancy and Howard and others have said that they've never seen loan documents work through Russ as quickly. Great cooperation has been produced. In record time, we've got the loan documents in front of you. Dave Fama is here to help answer any questions that I can't help. Thank you, David, for coming. The electric revenue, one of the biggest changes is that the electric revenue has been redefined to include property taxes, which are legally available and allocatable to the Electric Enterprise Fund. The resolution authorized the issuance of a bond to evidence a loan from RUS in the amount not to exceed $8 million. The bond will be purchased by the Federal Financing Bank and the repayment of the loan guaranteed by RUS. The resolution approves the various documents required to be executed by the district in connection with the loan and authorizes the general manager to execute these documents. The resolution and documents are substantially the same as the documents for the A8 loan and the outstanding loan from RUS. The new loan has the same claim on electric enterprise revenues as the existing loan. The new loan will be available to be drawn by the district periodically as costs are incurred for the Out Valley transmission line and substations, subject to the approval of RUS. And the district may prepay or refinance the loan at any time. Therefore, Dave, I don't know if you want to make any other comments that I haven't made?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
The district may issue additional debt of the electric enterprise as long as the requirements of the resolutions and any other RUS requirements are met. Based on our review and the review of council, the district staff recommends approval of resolution 1417, which I won't read.
And we've considered the finance committee. Any comments, Bob?
No, the finance committee recommends adoption. It's straightforward and it clarifies, it makes it absolutely clear that the use of tax revenue is appropriate for this. So in some sense, I feel that we are in a stronger position with this than we were previously.
So I have two questions. They both have to do with the property taxes. I just want to be sure, I'm sure this is the case, but just to be explicit, there's no conflict with that change in definition with the earlier pledges or of security using property taxes for the COP loan.
And that's why we put it to language that be legally attributable and allocatable to the electric enterprise.
And that doesn't conflict with the COP pledge.
That's why we put it in, so that it would not.
It does not.
But didn't we pledge it for the security for COP?
Right, so we put in the language that is legally available to be pledged.
Put into the COP language?
If it's legally pledged to the COP, it's not legally available for this.
But there's a limit to how much is pledged to the COP based on what's owed.
Okay.
So as long as we're below that limit, the extra amount is available to be used, and this language says we can only use the stuff that's actually available.
The COP
So I
is
think we're
only
covered.
pledged up until the payment has been made. So if the payment is due in January, that pledge is no longer valid in February.
Okay, got it. Okay, the other question that I have has to do, I mean, I know one of the reasons we're pledging the property taxes is to be the 1.05 tier ratio, right?
Right.
If we collect excess cash for whatever reason and squirrel that away in an account, you call it a reserve account or whatever, can we at a later date move that, in essence calling it income to the electric enterprise, and use that to help cover the tier ratio? Or does it actually have to be income to the district in the year that we're calling it income?
I believe that's the case. They want to demonstrate that our rates, our revenues in that year are sufficient to cover 1.05%.
From an
of our
income
costs.
statement.
Yeah, so you can't count reserved cash.
Yes,
as-
nothing else,
So we
nothing
can't
else
move it
counts.
from one place to another and call
No,
it.
the only thing we can do is we're obviously collecting revenues in excess of costs, and we're using that money to be able to borrow shorter term and pay it down. So it causes a bump this year and next year, and then we can drop rates after that. That's the
Thanks.
impact.
Any other questions on this resolution from the board or from the audience?
I just want to express our appreciation for the rapid turnaround both by the government and our staff and
Right.
support. This, we'd be in a world of hurt if we don't have this done on time, and so now we will.
So I'll make the motion to approve resolution 1417.
Epstein seconds.
So all in favor, Andy?
Andy, aye.
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Norberg, aye.
Epstein, aye.
So it passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your help and for your work, David.
My pleasure, thank you.
Aye.
Goodbye. So we'll move to item 8D, which is discussion and possible approval of telecommunications service line connection agreement with AT&T to provide telecommunications from KM Blue to PG&E Stockton. Manager Sharp and Michelle Gamble.
PG&E is requiring the district to provide a telecommunication line from KM Blue to their Stockton office to provide status information on the 115 line between Tiger Creek, Salt Springs, and KM Green. This line will cost about $868 a month, and I've asked Michelle to address this because she is passionate about this subject. So.
This is one of my pet peeves. No. When PG&E was initially going to own the 115 line, and they owned some equipment up at KM Green, a part of that discussion centered on this telecommunications line that PG&E required so that they could monitor what's going on in the 115 line. As we've moved forward with the district proposing to own the 115 line, we've gone back and we've revisited this issue with PG&E. Because right now we've been asking them the questions, do we need to have this T1 line? What are they monitoring? At this point, it looks like they are still going to need a T1 line because not only does it communicate from KM Green to KM Blue over the lines that we've put in place, but then from KM Blue to Stockton. But it also goes back from KM Green to Salt Springs and to Tiger Creek. So the switches there at 0 over 1 and then telecommunication equipment that's in both the PG&E substations, all of that works as an integral package. So we're not, at this point, we're not overly optimistic that PG&E is going to come back and say, no, we don't need the T1 line. However, PG&E has indicated that they need it to operate and maintain their equipment. And so I'm a very strong believer that if it's part of the O&M, it should come off of the cost of ownership. Now, we understand because of tariff issues that they can't just give us a credit against that, but we're actively pursuing with PG&E some way where the district doesn't pay an O&M charge to PG&E and pay this $868, which I think we all view as an O&M charge. So we're still actively pursuing that with PG&E. We should have resolution of that by the August meeting because it needs to get included in the IA. But that's the status of where we are right now on that.
Questions, comments from the board? Well, so that's 50 times more than my total volcano bill. Is $868, does that count what these things cost?
That's the cost of a T1 line. It has to be a T1. We could actually do a fractional T1, but Volcano, we have to go across Volcano lines for a portion, and Volcano doesn't offer a fractional T1. If they did offer a fractional at some point in the future, we'd be able to knock that down. But we don't see Volcano offering a fractional anytime in the near future.
Questions, comments from the audience? Manager recommendation?
This will come back before the board.
Okay, so you're not looking for any action at this point. 8E, discussion and possible approval.
I'll be
Thank you, Michelle, again.
Thank you. I'll see you noon for the tour.
8E, discussion and possible approval of agreement with Exponential Engineering to complete a remaining useful life study on the district's powerhouse. Manager Sharp.
The monthly depreciation accrual effective July 2014 for the powerhouse assets is $73,000 a month, or $885,000 a year. This reflects the 7% annual depreciation rate, which is 14.3 years estimated useful life currently required by RUX. With the powerhouse going into standby mode on November 1st, the district is petitioning RUS to allow a longer depreciation term due to the change in status. To support this request, staff recommends approval of the attached useful life study by Exponential Engineering in the amount of $13,580. With this as backup, we hope RUS will be persuaded to lengthen the depreciation schedule. If the proposed depreciation study by Exponential Engineering justifies and RUS would approve the use of a 3.5% depreciation rate, which is 28.6 years estimated useful life, the revised accrual would be $447,000 a year. If the proposed depreciation by Exponential Engineering would justify and RUS would approve a 3% annual depreciation rate with 33 years, the revised accrual would be $383,000 a year. Based on Robert Benson's experience with electrical cooperatives which make this change, he does not feel that a 3% accrual rate is unjustifiable. As you can see, the reductions in depreciation expense would be significant, and therefore district staff recommends approval of the Exponential Engineering proposal for $13,580 to do the useful life study.
Michael, can you translate these potential lower depreciation costs into cents per kilowatt hour?
Yeah, I think that's been done.
7.5 cents.
So what we've been talking about today is 13.5 cents of potential reduction in kilowatt hour rates.
Well, let's, if we get to 3, I think.
Yeah, potential.
Yeah, now, Michael, just clarity, that's the blended rate, because there's the building and then there's the generators.
Right.
And those would be evaluated separately.
Yes, but RUS would consider the whole thing as a blended rate.
Right.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, okay.
So my answer to your question is if we get to 3%, not 5 or 3.5, we'd have a 7 cents a kilowatt hour conservative savings. We considered this at the Finance Committee. Any other comments?
No, I think it's critical. Right now, if you look at our long-term forecast, there's this drop in 10 years. We're trying to move it up. So this is really important.
And it's also the first objective on Michael's 2014-15 general manager's objectives.
You better approve it.
It was moved from 5 to 1 by me personally.
And this is a cost not to exceed. So.
Any questions or comments from the board or audience?
It's nice for you to say we're going to get this cents reduction and this cents reduction, but we also just heard we may have a huge paving cost we didn't anticipate, and then we have $70,000 in project oversight and these things. Don't all of those just make the cents go up?
Yeah, but those are very small fractions of a cent. They're already included in that. Because our interest rate is so low, we're borrowing an extra $170,000 over a time period at 3%.
And those are also...
You're absolutely right. You have to calculate it all in. These are much larger numbers.
And they're also in the $36.99 million current estimate for the project, which we kind of compare with our budget last August of $37 million. So that's why I say we're about on budget right now, including Michael's estimates for the Caltrans paving and RCI's projected potential overruns.
So that's already in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? You've made your recommendation.
I'd like to move that we approve this proposal for the study.
I'll
That was,
second.
That was Epstein.
that was Epstein, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second it. All in favor? Andy?
Andy, aye?
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Darbrick, aye?
Epstein, aye.
So it passes. Moving to 8F, discussion and possible approval of proposal to install vacuum breakers at each of the district's water storage tanks for safety during drainage for maintenance operations for a cost of $14,000. Manager Sharp.
The Department of Public Health is requiring that the district inspect the interior of our water tanks every 5 years. This is yet to have been done, so we're delinquent. This can be accomplished by hiring divers to inspect, which is extremely expensive, or we can actually use the water, not waste the water, but actually use the water, and then without refilling it, and then you have a qualified inspector, which Matt Wheeler, our district engineer is, complete the inspection, let us know what we need to do with the interiors, and either do it then or do it in the future based on what needs to be done. The district has 2 water tanks, the Lodge tank and the Daneberg tank. To drain these tanks, the district will have to shut off first the feed and the supply lines because it's a pressurized system, so we have to shut off the lines to the tanks and install a vacuum breaker is required to be installed at each location to safely drain these tanks. And the question is why? The existing condition at the storage tanks is that you have the storage reservoir and you have a valve that's directly uphill, and it's open. But if you actually close that, a vacuum develops in the pipe downstream of the closed valve. This creates a vacuum on the uphill portion. If the vacuum gets severe enough, it can actually cause the pipe to collapse. Water pipes are built to withstand interior water pressure, not vacuum. With a vacuum breaker installed, in normal operation it would be closed and it would be normal operation of the tank. But however, if we had to shut that valve, air would be released into the system, thereby eliminating the vacuum and providing a safer environment for district staff to close that valve. This project is estimated to cost $14,600 plus district time for excavation. This project is included in the 2014-15 capital plan. We do not have a final proposal yet. We have an email proposal. Staff recommends approval of this project for a cost not to exceed $14,600, contingent on a contract being approved by the operations capital by Director Dornfeld. That's staff recommendation.
And
The committee concurs with Michael's recommendation.
Okay, is $14,600 a good price for this equipment?
Yes, there's
A low
2
price.
of them, and we feel that it's an excellent price.
Okay. Comments, questions from the board or the audience? I must say your PowerPoint skills have improved dramatically.
I was going to say, it looks like this nice snorkel when
Well, I'll make a motion to approve this purchase.
And I'll second that, Dornbrook.
All in favor, Andy?
Andy, aye?
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Darbrick, aye?
Epstein, aye.
So that passes. So moving on to 8G, discussion and possible adoption of audit and update of the sanitary sewer maintenance program. Manager Sharp.
The current sanitary sewer system management plan, the SSMP document, was adopted in June of 2012. The SSMP is required by the State Water Resources Control Board for agencies and with sewer collection systems under the State Water Resources Control Board state order. Elements of Section 10 of the state order specifies that internal audits must be conducted which evaluate the effectiveness of the SSMP in compliance with regulatory requirements. The audits must be completed every 2 years. An audit of the SSMP's effectiveness has been prepared in accordance with the regulatory statutes. The self-audit is included in Appendix G of the updated SSMP. The next self-audit will be July of 2016. The state order was updated last year to require an update of the district's SSMP. Certain items have changed, including the categorization of sewer spills, reporting parameters for spills, and most notably the overflow emergency response program, Appendix B and Appendix C, which have significant changes. The SSMP document has been updated to conform with these new monitoring and reporting requirements. And according to the SSMP requirements, recertification by the KMPUD Board of Directors is necessary when there are significant changes, so staff recommends approval of the updated sanitary sewer management plan.
And the committee agrees.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board or the audience? The only thing I'll say is I now have another new abbreviation for my vocabulary. My PUD vocabulary includes LOPs and clearances, which doesn't mean like clearances in the woods, but outages. And now an SSMP, that's great. So,
Trying to broaden your perspective.
thank you.
Dornbrook moves to adopt the sanitary sewer maintenance program.
Rickard seconds that motion.
All in favor, Andy?
Andy, aye.
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Epstein, aye.
So it passes. 8H, discussion and possible approval of revision to policy statement number 620, conditions of service regarding the responsibility of the district for public infrastructure, locates, taps, lines, and meters. Manager Sharp.
I mentioned that Michelle Gamble had a passion for the AT&T management. Go figure. This one I'm passionate about. In your packet is a revised edition of District Policy Statement 620, Conditions of Service. This update clearly identifies district responsibilities for all services in one document. It was previously, it only had water and sewer, now it has electric and propane. With new projects being developed, it's important to give new owners a clear definition of the responsibilities and service ownership. This is particularly important in older developments like KMA, where 4 service taps could be required, and it was built in the 70s. So you go to a vacant lot out there, and you go, where is my sewer tap? Where is my water tap? Where do I get my electricity work? Those taps are actually could be on the property, but it can't be the responsibility of the district to try to find them on private property. Our responsibility ends on public property at the public property line. We can assist with maps and location devices, etc., but it's not our responsibility to put in a new tap if one can't be found. For all services, the district's responsibility ends at the property line. The district retains the ownership of all meters, no matter where they are installed. It's the customer's responsibility to put the meter in a conditioned space. Condition means like a conditioned to temperature. It can't be in a freezing environment.
Mine are in a freezing environment, they're outside.
They're in a thermocoil box, which is a conditioned space. This is important not only for projects like KMA, which are older, but projects where the district was not the entity that inspected and approved the utility installations. You'll notice that, like at the Palisades, the district did a really nice job on setting the meter boxes and setting the so you could tell where your services are. But there's other services there that aren't marked at all. It's the customer's responsibility to go find where those service taps are because they're on private property. And this is clearly identified in all of our documentation. What 620 does is places all of this into one document, which we can hand to constructors and single-family developers. So with that, district staff recommends approval of policy statement 620, conditions of service.
And has the capital,
Yes, we've reviewed it. We think it's a good idea. Long overdue.
Yeah, all the services in one
Right.
document.
And it makes it easier for the developer to know what he's responsible for, right up front.
Questions or comments?
Michael, can you just go over that conditioned space requirement again? What's required to be in conditioned space? And I understand that the insulated water meter box is considered that, but what needs to be in conditioned space?
Just the meter. So a
In
water
propane,
meter,
electric?
well, propane meters have to be in a, conditioned space means water meter, because water is the only thing that freezes. But there's requirements for electric and propane meters so that they're put into a spot where there's no snow, like a 300 pound.
So that's what you mean by
They
conditioned?
don't have to be in conditioned space.
Okay.
Okay, so it's just the water meter.
Right, just the water.
Questions or
Snow
comments?
shuck and ventilation are key with propane.
Right.
Right.
Any questions or comments from the audience? So your recommendation is for approval?
So, this is Rickard. I'd like to approve the amended policy statement number 620 as presented by Manager Sharp.
Dornbrook will second that.
All in favor, Andy?
Andy, aye?
Rickard, aye.
O'Grady, aye.
Dornbrook, aye?
Epstein, aye.
So that passes. So final item under 8 is update on the progress of the district's water meter upgrade project. Manager Sharp.
The district is nearing completion of the final service to be upgraded to the FlexNet remote meter program, and that would be for the water. In 2013, the district completed the electric and propane metering upgrades. In 2014, we have been working on the water meters. These meters provide continuous usage reads rather than once a month. They are not impacted by the snow, so there's no more estimated reads. They allow owners to track their individual usage real-time over the internet, and once completed, this project will send alert notifications to owners and the district on usage variances such as leaks and no usage. The water meter upgrade was easily the most difficult of the three, and as water meters can be installed virtually anywhere in conditioned space, including usually underneath units like Edelweiss here, and usually with as much insulation and duct tape as possible. The locations have been varied and extremely difficult to get to. Here's an installation up under a building. It takes the operator to actually unwrap the water meter, complete the necessary repairs, and then re-insulate them. And as I said, water meters can be in the most awkward of locations. But with that, we are substantially complete with the project. We're looking forward to getting this complete by this summer and getting the necessary web improvements completed as well. It has been a savings. We've been able to save some substantial money on manual reads and open it up for any questions.
Any questions from the board?
I have a question. How does, again, the water meter, any conditioned space, how do you get the read? Is it an internet connection? Is it a remote scanner kind of a thing? Do you have to have a sensor on the outside of the house?
It's a remote read. We have an antenna up on top of the powerhouse,
Okay,
and we actually get it through the internet after that.
okay.
So, yeah,
So there's something that goes to the exterior of the house that, or does that, you know?
no, it comes straight from the water
Right
meter.
from the water meter.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a little transceiver that,
yeah.
sends the thing to our receiver, and then it hits into our system.
The neighboring water meters actually participate too, so it only has to make it to the next closest meter, which will then forward it. So it's not everyone has to make it to the antenna. Otherwise, you need a lot more powerful receivers
Oh,
and
okay.
transmitters.
Ganging up.
It's a community effort.
And could you identify
Oh,
yourself?
I'm
just-
sorry, Larry Parker.
Thank you.
What's the power source of this, the meter?
20-year battery.
Okay.
So actually, we installed the existing water meters in 1996, one of my first years here at the district, and now the batteries are failing and we're upgrading them, so it's a perfect time to
So you have to go around every year, or does the homeowner have to put new batteries?
Every 20 years,
I thought you said it was a one-year battery.
a 20-year battery. So,
Yeah.
And just for the record, this is an area where I expanded Michael's vocabulary, was substantially complete. And that's what my contractors have told me was the case in my remodels when they weren't quite complete, but they were very, very close, right?
substantially.
Anything else on 8I? That'll be a big improvement.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get that done.
And we'll have an alert system maybe by this
Probably
week.
by August, I'd say, unless we can finish it a little bit soon.
Look forward to participating in that. Feel free to use me as
Yeah, we were gonna
beta
create a
test.
leak in your house and see when you notice it.
Thank you.
We're gonna do one before and then one after, so you
Okay, then I
know.
can attest substantially complete.
Just put a plunger in your toilet.
It's better than having your house burned down for a training exercise.
Yeah, it is, it is, it is. We thought about that.
So 9A, Manager's Report, General Manager Report, Michael Sharp. 2 agenda items here, October 2013 rate, electric rate increases, and Graham Simmons Medical Needs Fund.
I'm going to start with a couple of general items first. As shown on page 94 in your packet, the aquifer levels remain strong as they should be with the existing snow melt. Wait to see how the level maintains over the next 4 months to see where actually, before the winter arrives, to see where we stand. The district is currently in a water stage alert. As a precautionary measure, we did receive quite a few comments during the weekend about it, clarifications on enforcement, clarifications on timing, as Armand Perot mentioned. At this point, staff is taking, I think, the board's direction. I just wanted to clarify that this is a communications effort. We're not actually enforcing, we're informing people of the water stage alert, but we're not doing, there is enforcement action in the ordinance, and we would bring that before the board if there was any blatant disregard, but right now it's a communication effort. Am I on the right path there?
Yeah,
I think so.
I do too.
Yeah. But in relation to this, what Bertrand mentioned, because obviously I noticed it came up on a Tuesday, I said, oh, I can water. So I turned on my irrigation system and so on, so I could water on Tuesday. And then not again until Saturday, because that's the East Meadows, those are the East Meadows days. I assume that it's set up that way, with different pairs of days for each homeowner, for each HOA, so that there's not a big surge of demand at one time, like on a Saturday or on a Sunday, that would deplete storage tanks in the aquifer, that all this has time to replenish itself by having water used more gradually than it might otherwise be. But that's the reason, I assume, right?
Exactly, and it was modeled after other agencies that Armand mentioning. It's actually modeled after South Tahoe.
Thanks.
Any other comments on that?
The Meadow Trail survey is out, and we have been hearing lots of comments, both positive and negative, from the ownership. We conducted a demonstration tour on Saturday and had 9 attendees. We also had a Meadow Trail table manned by Jeff Smith at the barbecue. I saw quite a few people over there. We're looking to formulate survey report results and present to the board at the next meeting. And I was like to open it up. Maybe Director Andy might have some comments, or any of the board.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that we're now out engaging the community and trying to see what the perspectives are and what issues there are, what consensus there is, if any, on this topic. And it is a fairly complicated thing, so we'll move through it as logically as we can to try to gather input and communicate back results that we have heard. Unfortunately, I was not there yesterday to hear directly from the community members, but perhaps Jeff is there. He might want to make any comments appropriate at this point.
Jeff's not here today.
Okay. Anything from the homeowner meetings that people want to share as preliminary perspectives, or should we just wait until we have the data pulled together from the survey?
Bob, you-
Bob, I can give you a little update. So as of 9 o'clock when the last person wrote in, we've had 39 people complete the survey. 27 of those had visited the trail, 12 hadn't visited it yet. And I'd say the comments, while some are really positive and some express more concern, they're all very constructive. So I think we've already collected a lot of data that could provide some good guidance for it. And we'll do one more reminder, and then I believe the survey went by print to those people that got printed bills. So we can encourage more participation, but that's a pretty good number already on that. So I feel like we'll get good feedback that's well documented that we can work on.
Caroline?
I have a little bit of input. What I've been hearing is that longtime residents don't feel that they need this because they know where the trails are and they know where to go and not to go, but that it would be a benefit for new guests who have no idea where to go. So I think, look at whether we're trying, especially if there's a lot of cost that the homeowners bear, and I know that we're not there yet, but if it's really for the benefit of guests, not homeowners, I think we need to consider that. I also heard in our homeowners meeting in the Meadows that there was concern about easements at various property lines, and not just the easement of the trail of the property line, but if someone's going to build a trail, is there an issue with the easement between, say, our property line and your trail, or whoever's trail it is? And that this could get very complicated. I think there was a concern about that.
Well, it sounds very complicated to me, to be honest. Meaning the planning committee's been spearheading this, but the more I learn about it, the more complicated it sounds to me.
Okay, maybe that problem resolved itself. We were starting to lose the audio in there for a minute.
Okay.
Did you hear Caroline's comments?
Most of it, yes.
So just, I do have a little extra data. I looked ahead on this. So the majority of the people who responded gave their contact information, so we can follow up on specifics, which is really helpful. And then 60% of people responded have lived here at least 15 years. And then 80% have been here at least 11 years. So I'd say the people who've been here the longest, have the most experience, have responded, but on the other hand, about 70% are in favor of improvements. So, I feel like given the data, looking at, we'll find some things that are good ideas that are broadly accepted. We'll find some things that cross the line. And I think there is a lot of confusion about whether who's gonna pay for this.
Well,
and I think we want to clarify that.
Yeah, if I may, Bob, this is Eric, I just, speaking for the planning committee, I think that what the committee's discussed, certainly my stated intent, whether everybody agrees with this or not, this was never intended to be a PUD project. It's being spearheaded by the PUD as an entity that has the ability to spearhead things. But the trail would be located on resort property, so it would be owned by the resort. The intention was that would be the construction of the trail would be a community activity co-sponsored by the resort, KCA, the HOAs, and the PUD, that to the greatest extent possible, whatever work is finally decided upon would be done with volunteers, and it would be done bit by bit as volunteers and resources are available. This was not intended to be a project like the Out Valley project where the KMPUD develops the funding and gets the permits and does everything. This was an idea that various people in the community have brought up from time to time, so we're simply spearheading the exploration of it, and hopefully everyone will come together to implement whatever is decided to be implemented.
Yeah, and I
I
think
appreciate that, Eric. I know that's your position and it has been all along, and I support much of that, maybe not quite as vehemently in one detail or another, but pretty much we're in alignment on this in terms of how we should conceptualize it. I think as we work through it, we're learning more. We're learning more important things this done largely through volunteer labor. I think that's by far the consensus view of how we can most efficiently do it. There are programs that Vail has that they run every year to do exactly these kinds of projects. Casey is aware of that, and I think this has at one point or another said this would be a project that could fit into that kind of approach if it gets to the point where we're ready to execute. There are costs even beyond that, though. If we get it all done with volunteer labor at some point in the future, there is material, and doing the demonstration trail, I think, has been very helpful in allowing us to see what the material costs would be. Not to say who would bear them, but we know a little bit more about how much they are, and they run basically $16 per linear foot in terms of the edging materials and the fill materials to do a nice professional job like the demonstration trail. So yeah, I think we're making good progress trying to figure out a concept, whether or not there are easement issues. If so, can we deal with them? If there are cost issues, how do we negotiate those with the various parties? And there's a lot to this, so we're on an important step, but not by any means a final step.
Just related to volunteers, if I can. So 9 people so far said they would volunteer to help. 14 said maybe, and 15 said no. So there is volunteer interest, which is good.
Peter, are you volunteering?
I am, yes, yes, of course I am. However, I raised my hand for a different point, which is really sort of a update educational thing. Bob Endy and I have had conversations, as have Michael and I, about an issue that we're trying to work with Vail to get resolution on, and that is the snowmaking line pipe that goes from Caples Lake up to the resort, and that was put in 15 years ago. There are some places in which that snowmaking line went outside of the easements on the property lines. We are working and reaching out. Bob Endy is one of the people to get that cleaned up. One of the issues that has come up that Bob raised, as did Gordon Zuckerman, was an issue of, while granting an easement for the snowmaking line, not granting any sort of a public access, public right-of-way sort of an easement. There are a small handful of owners where the trail currently goes across their property, in some places close to the property, and we have an interest along with them is to relocate that trail, not the snowmaking line, but relocate the trail, re-veg the trail down into the meadow area. I realize there may be core issues and other wetland issues down there, but just for all of your information, that is an effort we are working with Vail to try to get resolution on, and who knows, there may be some opportunities for the PUD and and Casey and Vail work together on some of the future uses of that line as well. So just an update item for you all.
Well, thanks for the update, and I could, one last comment?
Let me respond to that very briefly. I think that the situations that you talk about where the trail might be moved off of homeowners' lots and down onto the meadow, I think that probably puts us in a pretty difficult position in terms of being able to design, execute, permit a trail. So not to say that it's a way that the whole project comes to a point of infeasibility, and perhaps even the current informal trail becomes infeasible to continue using. But it would, on surface, it would appear like if we go down that path and try to move the trail onto the meadow surface, that's not to say surface twice, down onto the flat part of the meadow, I think we're in a pretty difficult position trying to make this come together.
Caroline?
I have one more comment. I travel with my very, at this point, elderly mother who is mobility limited, and there are places where trails have been built in various forests or whatever for wheelchair access, and it's wonderful to be able to do that. So I'd like to put out there that if we're really going to do something here, you should at least be discussing a portion that would be mobility limited access. which means you have to put a surface on it other than dirt. I mean, some kind of surface. I've seen the most useful one is really kind of like the hardy board siding. I don't know what they call it for a surface, but it's wonderful when you can do that, even if it's just a quarter mile or something.
Thank you. So we beat that issue to death as an update, and the planning committee will continue to beat it to death, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
During the summer of 2013, the board approved several rate increases. They were for electric, water, wastewater, and they were to go into effect in October of 2013. With Jill Campbell out on maternity leave, we missed the rate increase being incorporated into the PCS software, and it did not get incorporated in October of 2013 as it was planned. We caught this mistake when we were preparing for the audit and have corrected that mistake, but I have brought it to the Finance Committee's attention and to the rest of the board's attention. It's a 2 cent per kilowatt hour increase that was to be done. The board has subsequently made an increase in July of 2014, which will increase it from 54 to 56 cents.
Any comments from the board or the audience?
The only thing I'd add is it's unfortunate that we missed this, but we also had a discussion about what we could do. So, I mean, because errors like this could happen in the future to be able to catch it. So we have some ideas we're going to explore to try to have some consistency checks and things of that sort to try to catch problems sooner.
Like a calculation on the bill.
Right. Right. We could do that. Yeah.
It's a novel concept.
Yeah.
So it wasn't retroactive?
And that's up to the board, but it's staff's recommendation to just move forward.
Yeah, it was the finance recommendation to take it as a learning experience and not make it worse.
About 10 days ago, the district was approached by Frank Watford. Frank is organizing a fundraiser for Graham Simmons, and he asked that we participate by allowing Frank to set up a auction booth, silent auction booth at our wine tasting, and to make an announcement that Frank's booth was over there, and to encourage people to go over and participate in the Graham Simmons relief effort. Frank also suggested that the district contribute to the Graham Simmons relief effort. Before the board considers that request, district staff went into the California Special District Association's guide to special district laws and related codes, and it turns out that public officials cannot give, lend, or authorize the making of any gift of public money to any person, association, or corporation. So I don't think we have the legal ability to give public funds to a worthwhile cause, like the medical condition of an owner. So I would not recommend that the board consider this. It can't be an action item anyway because it's not on the agenda. But as far as policy goes, I do not feel, and we'll confirm this with our legal counsel, but a quick search of this shows that I don't think we have the ability to do so.
Comments from the board or audience?
No, only just encourage people who know Graham to donate to that fund. It's easy to do online, and probably just through Frank if necessary.
I guess the only thing I could say is that by Frank Watford setting up that booth, we increased our ticket sales. I don't know, significantly, probably. If it is legal, as a compromise, I would suggest that we subtract the final attendance. I mean, the pre-registered from the final attendance, and the percentage of that, if it's legal. But I kind of doubt that it's legal.
Interesting idea to consider.
Yeah, I was the greeter, which I guess you've been for 20 years, and there were a number of people who showed up who only wanted to go to the Graham.
Right.
And and they didn't want to go pay for tickets.
So they did, so your impression was that they didn't?
Well, I can't, I'm sure some people bought
Yeah.
tickets for the whole thing,
Yeah.
one track to another thing. But there were a number who just wanted to go to the
Yeah,
Graham thing.
understandable.
Michael let a few through, so I decided to let a few through.
Okay.
And then the only other thing is that, look, I read the CASD thing and it looked pretty clear to me, and it's in the
Yeah.
state constitution.
It's probably illegal. That was my first guess. Carolyn?
I have one more kind of related item. I had the idea in our committee to ask homeowners association to donate to the fire department effort. And I don't know if any had come in or not, but my board in Palisades feels that they also should not be donating owner revenues to something like the fire department. So they declined to do that. And I just thought you might like to know that information.
Thank you.
Sure.
Last item on the manager's report is that several meetings ago I asked for and was granted a change in the schedule from the November 8th date to the November 1st date. My plans have changed and we can go back to the normal agenda schedule if the board so chooses. I wanted to give that option to the board, so.
I've made plans now. I shifted my plans based on that change, and I've now purchased air tickets and so on accordingly. So I probably could not make a November 8th meeting anymore.
I just wanted to give the board the opportunity.
I'm fine either way. I was hoping that you made that change because we're going to pull the switch on air connection. I didn't realize it was for...
Oh, no, that was it, actually.
Okay, good.
Actually, I was looking for an extra week here, but I guess I just lost that week.
All right, so Halloween is still difficult. So we have an 8 AM meeting?
Yeah. Anybody prefer to change it? Or?
I'm good either
I
way.
did, I'm okay with either date. I did, took a plan off my calendar for October 31st to accommodate the change November 1st. So if it went back the other way, I'd be able to go to the Grand Prix in Austin. So I'll go either way.
I think Eric's looking like he sacrificed and we should honor his.
Well, it's just,
Yeah.
mean, hey, have a board meeting without me. Okay.
Oh, no, we
I
want
just-
you.
I just wouldn't be able to make November 8th anymore. I'll be in the air on November 8th.
I think our consensus, we should just leave it at this
Yeah.
point.
Is that it for general manager report, Michael?
Yes, it is.
Operations report. That's Rick Ansel, maybe.
Actually, I gave Rick a well-deserved day off, so I'll be handling the operations report. District staff is in the construction phase of the Loop Road project with conduit run from Renwick to the transformer at the propane vaporizer shaft. Next, we will pull cable and conduit to both ends and energize it. Once complete, we will move on to phase 3, which entails trenching and installing cable and conduit from the vaporizer stack all the way over to the vehicle maintenance shop. We'll also be running a main propane line to complete the valley loop to improve pressure and enhance reliability. But first, unfortunately, we were pulled off the Loop Road project due to a service line failure at the Volcano House on Fremont Road. This has been a major repair of a ground fault involving trenching across the road in KMA with many utility crossings. That's utility crossings. So that's power, that's cable, this is a sewer line, this is something else. There's another line here. That's just, and we still have to run our line through there. So you can see the difficulties of running any utilities in KMA. It's extremely congested over there and not well marked.
3 of those direct buried lines were hot, isn't that correct?
So this has been a major project for us. District crews have been able to run the new conduit and restore service at the Volcano House. I'm proud of them that we were able to do that within a week of notification. The Volcano House was not totally out of power, they just had limited power. It was one phase, the 3 phases were a direct short. So we'll be buttoning this up and then getting back onto, first we'll need to re-veg it and then getting back onto the Loop Road project. Another wine
When do
taste.
when do you estimate all 3 phases of the Loop Road project will be completed, phase 2 and 3?
This summer, I would guess,
Labor Day?
Labor Day. Another wine tasting in the books, this one as well attended as I can remember. We made many changes this year, including allowing food and beverage to run food and beverage, spreading out the venue to reduce congestion. The second year of the silent auction was well organized and received. We learned from the event, like the failure of the live auction, and we'll apply those lessons that we learned to next year's event. A special thanks to the wine tasting committee for all the hard work that they've done, Cheryl, Jill Campbell for everything at registration and all the different tables, all the volunteers, and especially Rick Ansel, who headed up the event and was given the day off as thank you.
Great.
So do we know what the silent auction brought in?
No, I don't think we haven't. I know that our pre-event donations exceeded $10,000.
And thank you for Rail's contribution, Casey. Very much appreciated across the board.
Yeah, the vegetable table, which was somewhat controversial, was well received. Cauliflower,
It was great.
it was, people loved it.
Yeah.
No, it was really
It
good.
was good.
I was
really
at
good.
I was at the dessert end, so people had already gone through much of food. And I got a lot of comments after asking, hey, where did this food come from? This is so good, and so on. So wherever it came from, whoever prepared it, great job.
Yeah, Scarlett and Jason did a super job. We really appreciate it.
A lot of good fire department corn shuckers.
Yeah.
Caught them all, there were like 7 guys shucking corn.
Yeah, I think it was the best wine tasting I've been to in my 18 years up here.
That concludes the operations report.
Electrical and propane systems update. Brandy, welcome.
Good morning. I'll start with the generator update. Generator 7 is still out of service, but I'm happy to report that the new Volvo engine for replacement did arrive on site on June 26th.
Looks like it's ready to be buried.
No, there's an unveiling.
It's going to be an unveiling here pretty soon. Power Secure has tentatively planned to do this later in July. We are also expecting that the warranty repairs on the other Volvos will be done at the same time, since the entire Volvo stack will be down for the Generator 7 replacement. Cat warranty repairs continue to progress. All of the repairs on 1 and 3 are completed, and the 2 service repairs have been moved to the 21st of this month, so that'll take about 2 weeks. We are progressing on the annual emissions test. Syntec is going to be on site on Tuesday to address the issue with the oxygen sensor on number 2. We expect that those repairs will happen within the week, and we have tentatively scheduled with Verizon an early August retest date for that stack alone, just the one stack. And we've shared these plans with Great Basin as the permit holder, and they're supportive of these plans. We've also gotten the propane regulators en route. The Keevil proposal, which was approved in June, to replace the main regulators at the propane vaporizers and add an additional second pair, is moving forward. The first set of regulators had arrived at the Keevil location last week, with the second set expected to arrive by July 9th. They are scheduled to be up here on the 14th of this month to do that replacement and repiping. It should be completed within the week as well. And we did have a powerhouse tour yesterday, less attendance than in previous years, but we did have 8 people come through. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
This is directed at Michael, but with the completion of the Loop Road project and the propane regulator system update, do you consider or do you not consider that we've cleaned up all the, frankly, garbage we bought from Mountain Utilities? Is there any other major things that you see as, frankly, energy infrastructure vulnerability items that we have not corrected?
I think there's two more issues that we should really clean up. And one of them is a direct buried line that runs from here to the lodge at Kirkwood. It's a redundant line, but it's important to our system for that redundancy.
Right.
But it is direct buried, so we'd like to replace that at some point.
And that's really the Red Cliff Lodge, not the lodge.
The lodge at Kirkwood, it's not the Red Cliff Lodge,
Okay.
it's the lodge,
Okay.
it's the 19-unit condominium
Right.
complex where the front desk, Casey's front desk.
Okay, right.
So that line, and then moving the meters from, for the extended service lines that we have, moving those closer in is going to lower our costs and also put our responsibility, putting those meters where they should be, I think is one issue that we need to get done to not continue to, heat up those transfers that don't belong to us. And those are direct buried lines as well.
And be able to actually read the meters like all the others, right?
Right, we have to manually read those. Those aren't on the radio because they're so far away.
Okay.
When do you think that might, is that scheduled, that work scheduled?
It's not scheduled, that's a money issue, that is not a manpower issue. That'll be an outside service, so, I don't have a specific date on that, but I can bring back a specific date.
I think that would be really good, because somehow I feel like that's an important one. When I look at the performance report on electricity, I always wonder how much of our underperformance is because of those situations.
We'll bring you
And,
back.
our underperformance on electricity, when I say underperformance, we don't know about estimating 10% of our electricity where it goes. All we know is we're not getting any money for it, and that's 600,000 kilowatt hours. That's a lot.
I'd say there's one other issue with regards to propane that we need to address eventually, is the security of the tanks. And that was pointed out to us several years ago. It's down the list, but there's some vulnerability there.
Well, since you don't have enough to do, and since hopefully that electric line's going to turn on and solve all of our problems until the end of time, I guess I'd suggest maybe we mentally put those on the list for completion, maybe summer of 2015. And, by the way, if you say no, we don't have the money, that's fine too, that's completion.
We'll bring all of these issues to the operations and capital, and
Okay.
once they're fully baked, we'll bring them back to the board.
Okay. But I guess I'd like to see, 4 years after we acquired Mountain Utilities, summer of 2015, for us to feel pretty good about all the infrastructure that we have and provide we can do it in a cost-effective way.
As long as we don't hit any more Mountain Club vaults, we'll be okay.
Wooden vaults underground?
Yeah.
We never know.
Anything else on electricity and propane? Administrative.
There's a question.
Sorry.
Sorry. Just sounds unusual for relatively new generators to be, sound like several went out or needed repaired so soon. Sorry if this has already been discussed at a previous meeting. What's the background?
No, we had an engine, one of the Volvo engines went out. We looking at the problem because of metal shavings in the oil. So that engine needs to be entirely replaced. The other repairs on the Volvo engines that are needed are very similar to what we're seeing on the CAT engines. And we feel that it's just a result of running these things 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, alternating off. But we're putting a lot of hours on these engines that you wouldn't normally get in a less than prime power plant. So all of the repairs that we're talking about are all under warranty.
Is a warranty running out after 5 years? Or?
Yes, the CAT warranty is extended into 7,500 hours, which we're expecting to hit that mark at the end of summer or early the next year. We're considering another re-upping of that. And the Volvo warranty is out at 5,000 hours, which we are right at, if not above, on a couple of the engines.
just to follow up on Larry's question, so we have one generator that's clearly defective, and the others, the repairs are within the range of other engines that operate in those number of hours, and our need for these engines drops about the same time the warranty expires, because they'll become backup.
Anything else from the audience on electric propane systems? Administrative report? Welcome, Jill.
I'll go ahead and start with performance reporting. It starts on page 111 of the packet. This is the final performance reporting for the fiscal year 2014. Starting with electric, June actual meter was 290,000 kilowatt hours. This is actually only the second month this year that we met plan. For the entire year, our kilowatt hour sales were down about 500,000 kilowatt hours from plan. And our average unmetered percentage after we take line loss into account is 9%, and staff is still looking into the reason for this and how we can improve that. Our kilowatt hour per gallon, our average for the year is 13.4, with our goal to be 14. For propane, our actual meter for June was 394,000 cubic feet. For the year, we were down 2 million cubic feet from plan. With propane, our unmetered percentage was at 1%. Not as much line loss with propane, and we did do a leak inspection this year, which did correct some issues. For wastewater, our production was down for June by 361,000 gallons. And for year-to-date, it was down 433,000 gallons. Our infiltration was high again for June at 51%. And the percentage of water not metered was also high in June. It was 30%. We're looking into reasons for this. There was a leak at Timber Creek in June. We don't know the exact amount because it was before the meter. We're estimating it was about 80,000 gallons. Is there any questions on performance reporting?
I guess the only comment I had is those are both pretty serious problems, and
I was hoping to see in June, especially with water, with the new meters being mostly complete, that would go down dramatically. So it's definitely top on our list to make sure.
that and the unmetered electric. It seems like summer months are when it's high, and winter months we can account for most of it.
Well, the amount of infiltration will.
No, I meant for electricity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to move on to May financials?
Yes. May was actually a good month compared to budget. For the income statement, I'm looking at on page 116, the combined income statement. The net loss was $23,000 less than planned. A couple of notes on the combined income statement. This year, salaries and wages are down from plan in May, and for the year. We've been able to allocate a good amount to our capital projects. The Out Valley has taken a lot of staff time, as well as the water meter project. So that's the reason that our salary and wages and benefits are down. for the year. Under G&A allocations for May, you'll see 90,000. That is the property tax allocation that was allocated to electric for May. Our year-to-date property tax allocations to the electric department are about 555,000. A couple of notes on individuals. The water department, contract services for May was up about 5,500 from plan. This is due primarily to the quarterly monitoring well testing. The way we budgeted water the past year was a flat line. We take our total expense budget and allocate it evenly throughout the year. So this was a big hit. We do this 4 times a year, which is why it was thrown off from budget. For wastewater, our operations and maintenance is over about 6,000 in May. There were chemicals purchased, and also there were some main lift repairs that were needed. And for electric, operation and maintenance is also over in May, about $13,000. There was an emergency day tank repair that needed to be done, as well as emissions testing, prep, and the testing expense. Are there any questions?
Nope.
The final on here is, there is an updated, where do I have it? An updated operating cash waterfall. I think this was set supplemental. This goes out for a year, and this is based on the budget that was approved last month for operating cash. June does show that it's down 359,000 from plan. 150,000 in property tax revenues were budgeted in June, but are actually going to be received in July. So with that taken into account, I'm showing that it's about $209,000 down from plan for the year due to.
So I do have a question on that one. I was surprised in our balance sheet report, back up to, I think it was 3.4 million, 3.2 million at the end of May, cash in the operating fund. And here in June, it's 2.8.
In the end of June is when our rust payment is due.
So it was purely because of that.
But these are also done differently. One is through the accounting system, and this is actually cash in the bank. So these have varied pretty much every month.
Yeah, I was just surprised to see the big difference. I was feeling good about the May balance, and then, yeah, okay about this, but not as good.
You know, we're still above the 2 million on our projected low point, which is December. And I noticed from the budget presentation at the last meeting, which I didn't attend but watched on video, we're projecting 1.5 million at December of 15. So we have a year and a half to make other arrangements. Anything else from the audience on financials? Great, committee report, or audit update, I'm sorry.
Oh, audit update. We did complete our initial meeting of the auditors in June. They will be back the week of August 18th to complete our audit. We have been working with them since they left. They've given us a list of all the items needed for when they come out to the audit to make sure that the time is well spent. I've been very pleased with them so far. They're brand new to us, but we've already made some calls to them with a few journal entries that we may have had questions on to make sure that we're doing it right, and they get back to us right away. So we'll see, but the plan is for them to pretty much complete the audit the week they're out here. They may have a few things to follow up on, but they guarantee that the audit will be done and to us by the end of September.
Anything else on administrative report from the board or the audience? So we'll move on to committee reports, communications.
Communications hasn't met since the last meeting, so there's nothing.
Planning, Bob Endy.
We likewise have not met since last board meeting. We talked about the Meadow Trail. I think the one other thing I wanted to give Peter Forsch, if he's in the room, an opportunity to say perhaps a few words about Timber Creek Townhomes, which I understand is moving forward quite quickly and possibly some action here to report.
Yeah, happy to, Bob. We are going to break ground in a couple days, and with all the infrastructure work, it's got all the necessary approvals. There's a few, I think, fine tuning items with the PUD with respect to some line sizes and that sort of thing. But have all our permits, have Joy Engineering coming up to mobilize, and that process will take about 2 to 3 months. Will include building foundations for both the triplex and a duplex in there. At the same time, probably lagging by about a week, we're going to begin the process of construction of these units. They are a modular system structure built in a plant in Utah, and we are just at the final design specification with that, and so they should go online. Their time frame is about 3 months, so we expect to have these ready, done, transported, and set probably, hopefully in October, perhaps as late as November, with occupancy as early as Thanksgiving. So it's a pretty exciting project. The contractor, manufacturer has built 3 homes using this technique up at Martis Camp, which is I think, a testament to the quality that can be achieved along with meeting all the regulatory types of things. So, we've had some good interest. We have some pre-reservations. But we also know we have a skeptical audience out there, whether they're homeowners or prospective buyers, given much of the sort of foundations in the ground and promises made, not kept. So our primary goal is to deliver a quality product that has sustainable silver LEED standards, low maintenance cost, high energy efficiency, smart technology. So we're excited that these units, and think that hopefully in our minds this is going to be the first step and the start in what I call proving Kirkwood, proving that there is a market out there, that there is a value, there's an absorption. And so this is a very important project for all of us to get this thing off the ground and take advantage of what I believe is a perfect time in the development cycle, the economic cycle, the real estate cycle. I think of this as kin to about 2002, when people were planning and developing prior to the mid-2000 run-up. And while I don't see that, unbridled enthusiasm, I think all points, all economic points, market cycle points, point to this being a great time to be, launching and planning. And so I'm excited and optimistic, and hopefully this will accelerate not only us, but for other developers to come in and take advantage of a good market cycle.
Okay, good. Thank you, Peter. I think that's about it for the planning committee.
Finance committee?
So we covered many of the items already. I think the only thing I would probably want to mention is I think the finance committee, the main job over the last several years has really been finding debt, finding a way of financing everything and making it affordable. So at this point, we can kind of see the end of that. That project will be completed in less than 2 months. So I really think our focus will gradually shift to how do we lower rates? Where are the inefficiencies in the operations? How do we fix them? How do we use our capital to get the rates down? Because they're peaking. They hurt.
They're too high.
And so that's what I think our attention really will start to move to that area and see what we can do. Obviously, the improvements with PG&E and others, and if we can get the depreciation adjusted, that will be a very significant starting point.
I'll comment a little further on that under personnel.
Yeah.
Operations and capital.
I think we pretty much covered it all.
Right. And for personnel, we've had a meeting on Friday. Pretty much the focus was both reviewing Michael's performance against general manager objectives for 2013 and 2014. And the other main item was setting objectives or trying to agreeing on objectives for 2014, 2015. And I think we did both, and we're going to follow up this meeting with a closed session to discuss the general manager's performance and any compensation changes. But I would say that a couple of things on general manager's performance for 2013-14, feel free to elaborate or disagree. But Michael put together what we thought was a very fair grading. I think you've all seen this, where he's said, hey, I think I accomplished 85% on this objective, 100% on others. And I would note, comparing last year's objectives with prior year's objectives, which I did, is they were substantially harder. There was a larger degree of difficulty. I'd call it black diamonds as opposed to blues and greens, if you will. And I was assigned to go and kind of multiply out Michael's percentages against what we thought were the higher priorities, and the number for what it's worth was 82%. Michael hasn't seen that. That compares with 92% for last year. And Eric asked me what I thought about it, and I said, hey, I thought a lot of these objectives are just a lot beefier, a lot tougher, a lot meatier than the prior years. And so in terms of overall performance, this is my third year on the board at this meeting to discuss the general manager's performance. I made the error, I guess, in the first year of assigning a letter grade. And as many of you know, I was pretty critical of the district's financial management early on in my tenure. It's improved a lot. But the first year I gave Michael a B- or B+, and he whipped out a certificate from a managerial accounting class that I'd suggested. I didn't think he followed up, and I said, hey, I have it. I need a raise. So we raised to A-. And then last year I was away, but Eric sent me an email saying, please provide your thoughts, and I provided a long set of comments. And I said, frankly, again, Michael's just hired a couple of new accountants, Jen Barstead and Kelly. I haven't seen the results, but I would say in a normal year, B+, given it was a hectic year, A-. This year, I went to the meeting, and I think we concluded that both Michael and the PUD had one heck of a great year. And so when I left the meeting, I went home, talked to my wife. She said, how'd it go? I said, well, I'm going to have to give Michael an A. And what's really troubling me is really whether I can give him an A+. And I don't know how to do that, because the college I went to, they had no A+ as number one. And number two, I've spent 25 years on the board of directors of small companies with chief executive officers. And I don't think I've ever given an A+ to the CEO or general manager. And my wife said, I've got a third problem for you, which is I spent 20 years in personnel at Wells Fargo, and you don't ever give A+, because that says you have nothing to work on to improve next year. Well, I'm giving you an unequivocal A+ as president of the board for your work last year. And by the way, that extends to the whole district. So I don't think anybody, everybody gets A+. Michael will figure out who's got the A+, the B+, and so forth. But I think the district had, one hell of a year. And the only downside to that is I'm not sure what you're going to do for an encore or how you improve on that next year. But we have set forth what I consider very meaty objectives for 2014, 2015. I'm determined to get our money's worth out of the general manager. And as I said, I would elaborate on some of the finance committee comments, which are to get rates down and not to take on additional debt. And one of the ways we're going to do it, in addition to accounting things like depreciation, is to focus on what you call the managerial reports, and that is line loss and unmetered water. And I expect that to be a focus of our monthly meetings. Anything you'd care to add or subtract?
No, thank you.
And the only thing I have to add is, I mean, I completely agree with everything Standish has said. And I think the 82%, I actually did my own spreadsheet after looking at Standish's and thinking that I could probably improve on what he did. I came up with
No doubt.
81.1%, so I guess I didn't. The reason for that, though, and I mentioned this to Michael in the meeting, is that there are some projects that technically were supposed to be done by the end of June, which, when we set the goals, I mean, the Loop Road project was never going to be done at the end of June, so in my mind, it was always the end of summer, and I think we're on target for that. So what drags that percentage down is simply that some of these projects, like the Loop Road project, couldn't be done by the end of the fiscal year, and yet they were contemplated in the goals that they would be, but they couldn't be. So, anyway, I think that you're actually got a better percentage than this indicates.
But thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
So that's it on personnel. General discussion, this is the opportunity for,
Yeah, I just a logistical thing. Should the board adopt the 2014-2015 goals, or do we do that next month, next meeting? I know we adopted them last year. It seems to me that they should be, carry the weight of board endorsement.
Yeah, I think we do that, but I think we do that as part of the closed session.
I don't think so. I don't think you adopt goals in closed session. This is.
No, I thought we would discuss them and then in an open session.
They shouldn't even be discussed in closed session.
Yeah, you're
It
probably
should be
correct.
discussed in open session. So I request that we put this on the August agenda so the goals can be viewed by the public, discussed, and formally adopted.
I have the same view, Michael, which is that what I thought we'd do is discuss any people's comments at the closed session and make them an agenda item for adoption at the August meeting.
The comments should only be on the performance of the general manager, not on the goals.
Okay.
Not on the new goals.
Okay. You agree with that, Pete?
I'm good with that.
I'm easy. General discussion opportunity for board members to ask questions for clarification, provide information to staff, committee updates, request staff to report back on a matter or direct staff to place a matter on a subsequent agenda, otherwise known as a catch-all.
I have one. Jill has a very difficult signing to do. We'd like to get it done, I would assume, right after, in between the open and closed session. So while you're just sitting here, if you could just wait a moment before we go into closed session and sign the B8 documents.
Sure.
Which are really important. And I think she's got a pretty good handle on it, but it's good if we just.
So unless there's any, is there any further business?
There's one thing, assuming we're on schedule, I'd bring up now, and that's just to talk about, make people aware that when we originally started looking at redoing all of our customer-facing computer systems, we hired Computer Courage, and our original plan is they would do the bulk of the work, and I would do some behind-the-scenes stuff. And as we got into it, we gradually realized that although that was optimal for me, and actually it was suboptimal for how the systems are going to work. So as a result, we've actually moved some functionality from them back to stuff that I'm writing. And this is a way of sort of saying there's now, they all work, but there's kind of a large dependency on one person. And even though I think he's a good programmer and it certainly works at effective rates, it's not a good long-term strategy in terms of, we have redundant Volvos, but we only have one of me. And so,
Volvos don't work anyway, so.
What's that? Yeah, yes. So we can do all sorts of analogies, whatever. But I think people should just be aware that, there's no immediate risk, but it's not a good place
To be.
to end up. So I would like to make, one of the objectives over the next year, in addition to making the systems work really well, both for, the resort, for online access, which we have yet to figure out how we want to do, but I want to do that, and the meter reporting, the rest of that, but then to have a very solid backup for maintenance behind that, which we currently, so it's a vulnerability, I think, that we can manage, but it's not one that we should tolerate, and I should be pushed to solve that problem. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Also, we learned a lot talking to some of our customers yesterday. This one woman came up and You know, it's just got this toilet that runs and it generates 8 cubic feet of water an hour. And it was right there, you could see when it started leaking and when it stopped and whatever. So there's a lot to be gained by really making the systems work well. So we all the data was there, but we don't have the systems fully in place yet to flag these things. So we can really, because it doesn't do any of us any good to waste, you know, we get revenue, right? But that's not our goal. Our goal is the efficient use of the natural resources here. So there's an awful lot we can be gained by getting this stuff really working well. And so that kind of further motivated me to sort of kick it into higher gear.
Good,
So
well,
that's
I'm
my-
all in
that's my
favor of you being
confession.
fully motivated to complete it and develop what we call a succession plan.
Exactly. I think that should be on the agenda. I guess that's my main.
Just related to that, Bob, I think we all owe you a big thank you for the work you are doing behind the scenes. It's truly amazing. I'll just remind everybody that when we bought the water meter system, we were told it would take at least $70,000 or $80,000 to program it just to be able to have individuals see it, see the results on the web, and a substantial period of time. I never thought it would actually happen, and then Bob did it in about 3 months, so it was pretty amazing.
Well, there's standards, not just me, but there's a dependency that we should. Yeah, okay. So that-
Thank you.
that's my
So
comment.
meeting adjourned?
Going into closed session.
Okay, we're going to temporarily adjourn, suspend, and go into closed session. So Bob, Andy, we'll call you back in about 10 minutes?
Yeah. So Bob, call back in, actually.
You want me to call back in, Michael?
Yeah, that's good.